I want to assure you, first off, that the loss of Xana, Kaylee, Madison, and Ethan remains the highest priority for the Moscow Police Department. We will continue putting all of our resources into investigating and solving these murders.
We do an in-depth analysis of the crime scene where 4 University of Idaho students were found murdered. What does the house layout tell us about what happened? Retired crime scene reconstructionist and YouTuber Johnny Law breaks it down. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber.
We all want to understand why this happened and what drove someone to do this. The families of those involved and our entire community deserve to know.
There are still so many questions regarding this horrific quadruple homicide out of the University of Idaho. I'm talking about the 4 students, 21-year-old Kaylee Gonsalves, 21-year-old Madison Mogan, 20-year-old Xana Kernodle, and 20-year-old Ethan Chapin, who were all found brutally murdered in their off-campus home out in the college town of Moscow. Now, police haven't revealed much about the investigation. We know that there have been no arrests. We know that no killer or suspect has been identified. What we do know is that several people have been ruled out, and this includes Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, who were the surviving roommates of the slain friends. They all lived in the same house. Funk and Mortensen were on the ground floor, while the victims were killed on the second and third floors, which actually brings me to one of the most important aspects of this case, and that is the crime scene, the house. And to get a better understanding of the layout of this house, I'm joined by Johnny Law, a 25-year retired veteran crime scene reconstructionist and sheriff sergeant who actually served as a SWAT team sniper and also in the United States Marine Corps for 2 tours. He actually provided an in-depth breakdown of the house on his YouTube channel, so I encourage everyone to check it out there. Johnny, thanks so much for coming in here on Sidebar.
All right. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, and by the way, thank you for your service as well. We very much appreciate it. Done some great work and also on this as well, because a lot of people do have questions here. So we're going to start off. There is a sketch that we're going to show everybody. And my understanding, it was provided to you by a third party who says that it was posted by the property management. So it's kind of unconfirmed, right? But your first, this kind of crude sketch, it pretty much matches up to the property that could be found on a website like Zillow, right?
Yeah, correct. When I received it, the overalls for the outside and the inside and the layout really matched. I took it to Zillow, started comparing stairwells where those were located, and the actual bedroom layouts and the windows where those were laid out, and it matched right on.
Yeah, so if you look at this image, right, it shows different views of the house: the top view, the front view, the rear view, and then it shows 3 floors. So briefly, if you can briefly summarize, what should we know about this house when we're looking about it? Let's start there. What should we know about the house?
Well, it was originally probably a 1-story that they built into a 2-story house, and right above the 2 bedrooms on the bottom, directly above that, there's one bedroom directly above another, and then above another bedroom is just the living room area. So there's pretty much dead space from there all the way to the 3rd floor.
Yeah, and I think let's start with the real interesting question that everybody has. It's whoever did this. You would imagine that the 2 surviving victims who are on the ground floor, if you look at it right here, wouldn't they be the first victims, right? You go in, I imagine, a possibility is the killer comes in through the door and you would go strike the first 2 victims on the ground floor, but to have the victims on the 3rd and the 2nd floor, what do you make of that?
Well, we don't know where they entered. We don't know if they entered through the front door or the 2nd story slider that goes into the kitchen. There, just from law enforcement reports and video, they're spending a lot of time at the sliding glass door. Looks like they're throwing some fingerprint dust on there, maybe some other chemicals on there to see if they can find any kind of evidence of blood or fingerprints. But I didn't really see them spending a whole lot of time on that front door, so they could have entered up to the backside where there's a tree line. But right now, there's no reports on which way they did enter. There's a ladder on the side of the house people have been talking about, but we don't know if that ladder was there before, if it was used to gain entry somewhere else. It's unknown at this time. It's all speculation.
So just to make clear, there could have been a ladder that might have been used, or maybe the tree to get to the 2nd floor.
There's a ladder leaning up against the house on to the right of the front door along the side of the house. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt about that ladder. Who knows where if it was used, if it was been there, if investigators brought it, we don't know. But they've been spending a lot of time on that back slider glass door, and so I think they're paying a lot of attention to that point of entry right there, whether it was secured or not.
Let's start with the second floor. Okay. So the second floor is of particular interest. We know that two of the victims were found there. What should we know about? And again, I'm looking at the sketch. Bedroom 2A, bedroom 2B. There's a living room. There's a bath. There's stairs, which we'll get to in a second, and then there's this patio ground. Let's talk about the bedrooms. What do we know?
Well, we know if you're looking at the sketch in 2B that that's probably more than likely Zaina's room. That's where she stayed, where Ethan probably would have been staying with her on November 13th. 2A, there's a lot of pictures of Dylan up there, but I think reports are that 2A may have been vacant at the time and that Dylan may have been in 1B down to the bottom right. Now there's also pictures of Dylan in 1A. So I mean, Bethany in 1A. So we think we're confident Bethany's in 1A, that Dylan's either in 1B or she's in 2A because there's pictures of her in 2A with some of her items of clothing in there. So right now, just speculation. We don't really know exactly. And regardless, if she's staying in 2A, she could have been sleeping in 1B on the 12th. She could have been in Bethany's room with her, as girls commonly do. My daughters did it all the time. So it's all speculation at this point. We just know that police said two were found on second, two were found on the third.
And we know that Ethan and Zaina were a couple, and so obviously they would be together in this room. What's the layout of 2B?
2B is just, when you enter the door, there are some pictures of a bed that is directly against I don't know, orientation wise. If you go in the door and hook a left, that the bed is laid in that direction, that orientation. Go in the door, the bed's kind of laid in this direction here. Um, and there's just, normal girl stuff that's throughout the room. But other than the bed being laid out one way in photos on the 13th, unknown.
So the 2B, do we know if something happened in there, the chances somebody would hear it in the upstairs rooms where again Kaylee was found and Maddie was found, or below where the two surviving victims were? I mean, the room of 2B, what's above and what's below to the best you can understand?
Well, above 2B is nothing because the rooms the third rooms are above the second floor because it cants out, right? So 2B ends here, and then there's this canted out kitchen. Well, above that is 3A and 3B, but on the other side of the kitchen is another bedroom, which is 2A. So 2A is kind of on a different. It's kind of an add-on, if you will. There's a step down from 2B that goes out to a kitchen, and that's where 2A is, and then directly above the kitchen and 2A are 3A and 3B.
So, in other words, let's say the killer struck at 2B first, right? It wouldn't be surprising that the other people in the house wouldn't hear it.
There's nobody, right? There's nobody above 2B, right? Now, well, if Dylan's below on 1B, then that's happening above her if she's there.
If she's awake, also, we have to
If
think
she's
about that
awake.
as well. Right. Okay,
Right.
so let's go to the
Yeah, we
third
don't know.
floor. Can you tell us how the second floor and the third floor, where the staircase is, and the how quick it would be for somebody to get from, let's say, 2B up to, and again, I'm looking at this sketch here, 3B and 3A.
Yeah, so if you can imagine coming out of 2B and taking a hard right, you go down a drop down and straight ahead the stairs go up. And they just loop around in kind of a U-turn. And right when you come up to the top, right on the left is 3B and to the right is 3A. I mean, it's a pretty quick. It's not a big house, so it'd probably take, I don't know, less than 30 seconds to do that.
And the
I would
rooms
imagine
3A and 3B are very easy to get to from back and forth.
very easy. There's just a hallway separating them.
Do you have any, based on looking at this case, do you have any idea about the order? Or, I mean, it might be so premature, the order of the killings or anything that's a difference to you between 3A, 3B, and 2B?
I don't. Investigators are going to have a lot of better time figuring that out. Based on uh, uh, you know just the way the stab wounds are and transfer of blood and commingling of blood, and they have a hard work because if you're doing a killing in one room and you're taking that blood and you're going to another person, you're introducing that blood into another person. Now you're commingling that blood, and then you take that to the third person and the fourth person. assuming it's the same knife, you have commingling. And so investigators will have to say, well, if this person's DNA is not in number 4 and everybody else's is in some other, upstream or downstream, they're going to have to try to figure that out and blood type that in the lab and figure out if there's any commingling at all, or if there's any kind of blood evidence on the floor as well for that may have dripped off the knife, or if the suspect got cut himself.
Do we know anything at this point about blood stains, blood spatter, anything like that?
Nothing, nothing other than the pictures on the outside of the wall that looks like suspected blood that's coming from 2B, where Zana and Ethan were staying. That they'll field test that and then run it to a lab to verify it. But that's the only pictures of blood I think that we have right now.
By the way, the house, the neighborhood it's around, the sort of neighboring houses, for anybody who doesn't know, how close is it to neighboring houses? Is it kind of, secluded in a way? Where is this house based in terms of the Moscow area?
So it's not very far out of town. I've seen some reporters that did the drive in like 3 or 4 minutes. They got to this property. It's got surrounded by trees on a couple sides. It's not a normal track house where there's houses right next to you, where you could, touch your neighbor's house. It's probably got, a half-acre lot, something like that. So they're a little bit spread out, but not so much spread out that you can't see each other.
When you look at this house, I mean, the whole situation's so incredibly eerie. And, I just remember my time in college, so many houses look like that. There's nothing from when I'm looking at any of this that stands out to me. It looks like a typical off-campus house, a typical scene. None of this makes sense. Is there anything looking at this crime scene that stands out to you? I mean, if you were in charge of this investigation, what would be some of the first rooms you would look at? What would be some of the things you would want to know? Is there anything that stands out to you, even from this bird's eye view about the house that says, I would look a little bit closer at that?
I really trust the investigators right now to do their job. They got a lot of help. They got a lot of experts in there. They got hundreds of years experience that are coming in here and doing the best they can. I can't imagine rolling up on the scene, especially I worked at a small police department in Oregon that only had, a half a dozen officers. So I can't imagine rolling on this and then reaching out for help when I was a new cop. But, the things that stand out a little bit that would help a perpetrator would be the wooded area behind it. There's a lot of concealment back in there. I don't know what the lighting situation was on the streets as far as how well that's lit. There's been some reports that it wasn't well lit, and now it's lit up. But that tree line is a pretty good place for someone to lay in wait if they wanted to. So I'd really be focusing a lot on that area. Now, it's cold, it's rainy, it's wet, and so a lot of the evidence they're going to try to find in that area, it's going to be pretty difficult to find.
Johnny Law, thanks so much for taking the time. I encourage everyone to check out your YouTube video on this, where you even go into further detail about the house. And you've been following this case as well since it started. Tell everybody where they can find you and get more updates about this case.
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Johnny Law, the Johnny Law on YouTube, and Johnny Law 50 on most socials. And you can hit me up over there anytime.
Johnny, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And that's all we have for you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here on Sidebar. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.